Welcome to the Red Diamond Wargame Podcast. I am your host, Major Kurt Locker Honig, and joining me today is Major Chris Pinksheets Lowe, representing Team Marfor Uraf, along with his teammate Major Nate Gnome Body Rogers. Chris, thanks for being back on the podcast.
Thanks again for having me.
Please note that all opinions expressed are entirely those of the participants and do not reflect the United States Marine Corps, their units, or any other organizations of which they are a part. So, Chris, we've recently returned from Washington, D.C. at the Modern Day Marine Conference and competing in the Commandant's Cup. What was that experience like this year?
It was, I would say this is probably more of a wild ride than last year was, because last year was your first year as well, correct?
It was.
Yeah. Well, this time, I think I kind of had some of the same thoughts as you, is in that I kind of have an idea going into it, but Tim and the team were able to throw in actually a sizable amount of curve balls, for better or worse. I'm sure we'll get into that. But it was very dramatic. Not as open competition after the first couple rounds. The pack leaders got spread out pretty quick. It was still a wonderfully fun time, and actually adding in the team match was it was a good step. It's not. I think we could do more with the team aspect of the tournament, but I still enjoyed it quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Marfor Uraf was fourth place overall. And was the second place Marine Corps team. We do have to properly disclose that the U.S. Army came into our house and took the top spot, which is really is an opportunity to take our hats off to Major James O'Keefe and Captain Gregory Fitzpatrick of the U.S. Army. They were exceptional competitors. They took it very seriously, which, as you and I discussed, we would probably do the same thing if we were ever to crash a U.S. Army wargaming competition. But they were outstanding opponents, and so were the Polish Land Force Academy cadets. They did an exceptional job as well. I like giving Lucas a hard time because I know that he works extensively with those guys, specifically on these games. And let's keep in mind that they almost didn't make it. They had to fight the Finns at the last minute to get in. And so that speaks very highly of some of our partner allied countries, that they are fighting vigorously to even qualify for the competition and then end up taking the second spot. But as the second place team, that meant that you got to participate in 5 rounds. So unlike last year, where there were 4 total rounds, this year there were 5. We had an additional first round individual competition, which was the company commander game, except this time you didn't sit across from your opponent. The opponent was the computer, the AI, and you took the top spot in that round. So what was that experience like?
I quite enjoyed that one, given everyone giving it a fresh, no one could practice it, so everyone's at the same basic level of unknown as to what the scenario is, and then given some time to plan, look over the 6 TOs, or tables of organization, we were given. Kudos on the mug.
Thank you, Tim and team.
Yeah, mine is on my desk at work. Along with my Conqueror of Midway trophy.
There you go.
But no, I appreciated that everyone's going in about, a same cold gun. We know Company Commander Modern, we don't know the scenario. And then we each get 6 TOs, all standard TOs with varying levels of air and surface delivery options, and just, doing your best planning, picking which way you're going to go, and then send it. The scenario itself, it caught a lot of people off guard, because I think it was... you technically won yours, didn't it?
I did not. I drew. I made it... We only had 12 rounds to win, but we had to achieve 90% destruction of the enemy, and I had not achieved 90% by the time I hit turn 12, but I was close.
Yeah, and you were over 100 points, right?
I don't remember how the math shook out.
Yeah.
Because we don't have Company Commander as the two different round scores. I just have the Company Commander score, so I don't remember exactly what it was.
The overall, yeah. So I know, but the way scoring went with this one is takes your points for the game and it doubles it. So max points is 200, vice just one match having 100. I did quite well. I think it was like 80 something, so I ended up with like 177. But I think straight up wins, it was myself and then the two Poles and the two Army guys. And that, the most interesting part of round one was just the point spread, because that broke out places 1, 2, and 3 pretty much for the entire tournament. Because it wasn't until round 5 when 2MEF and us, Marfor Uraf, played each other. And that one was even interesting because that was a double-pointed game as well.
Right.
And if it was single-pointed, even though we lost through a really good play, if it was single-pointed value, we would have stayed third place. But because it was double-pointed, Gucci and Andrew were able to squeak by with 30 points, which, and again, at this stage in the game, it's 30 points out of, I think they finished with 1,100 and we were 1,082. So it's, 2%, a tiny fraction. But yeah, it's, I think the hot debate for Tim and his crew is the double points in rounds 1 and 5. Because even though the Poles beat the Army in round 5, it didn't get them enough points to squeak out first place.
Right.
So I know Tim and his team, I heard some of their side discussions about possibly having to redo how, if it's going to be a points-based tournament or if they may switch over to something like wins, objectives, points, where, 3-0 beats 2-0. But if we're both tied at 3-0, then how many objective points did we get? If we're tied on that, and then it's how many points of destruction we did. Which is, I think, more streamlined tabletop games like BattleTech will do that. I'm pretty sure Warhammer 40K is a similar, tournament kind of structure. I really enjoyed the first round, especially when the Hex War team brought out all the scotches.
Yeah, that's good.
This tournament definitely was much more of a, like last year, it was kind of a cool thing. Yeah, it's cool. We're in DC. There's all this stuff, but this year it made it feel like, hey, you guys, here's a goodie bag with a whole bunch of cool stuff, like your mug, the mouse pad, the Zap sticker. They had all kinds of stuff. And Hex War brought out, for round 1, it was, kicked a lot of people's asses, but like, hey, here's some scotches. We got a little mini trophy, and they made it more of a, not full on, but you could say it was like more like a pageantry of like, hey, this is, you guys are the top 11 teams in the world. Have at it.
Yep. There's a celebration aspect as well, which just adds to the fun, right? And we've talked extensively in the past about war games need to have two different components. One is the educational side, where you're really starting to understand different concepts, capabilities of weapon systems, all these different things. And the other one is, it's got to be fun. You got to want to keep playing. You got to want to keep coming back. Or else the lessons stop being taught, they stop being learned, and we don't want that. That's my biggest argument about the Battle for Midway, is that I think a significant number of lessons were available to be learned. And it's very easy to get kind of sucked into the I don't like the way this game shook out, whether it was the difficulty setting of the AI, which for the record was only, if I remember right, it wasn't even hard, right? They had
it was set to hard.
It was hard, but they have an easy, hard, and then an advanced.
Brutal mode, yeah.
Yeah, so at least we didn't have that. We had the hard mode. I think it taught some very aggressive lessons.
It did, and it's, I thought they gave us a pretty good brief without exposing too much. I know a lot of people were very disconcerted if their UAVs got shot out of the sky, so they were going in blind.
Mm-hmm.
But then it also comes into just picking the right point, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Or, again, it's how well do you plan? And my plan, I mean, I thought it was simple enough. I picked, I don't have it on me, but I picked TO6, which was majority air, but
Mm-hmm.
one company of ACVs
Yep.
hitting the beach. It gave me a little bit of flexibility. And
Mm-hmm.
between the two islands, pretty much everything went at the main island
Mm-hmm.
from west to east,
Yep.
targeting the western point, which was the edge of the runway.
Yep.
Because just based off the initial map recon, I was like, that's the most obscured point. It's the shortest point to travel to get things onto the beach.
Correct.
And then I had a platoon in reserve coming from the north to the other island, but I left that one in the because they had set it up coding issues. Essentially, the outer border was a safe zone, so we could
Right.
place everything prior to, but as long as we didn't pull it out of the safe zone, it wasn't officially on the map.
Right.
Because when they script reinforcements, that they have all that down, but they don't have like, hey, here's your reinforcement box, and then you can start pulling stuff out. You have to in the safe zone setup, and it worked well enough for me. I was able to get ashore, mass enough combat power, start throwing out enough suppression rounds to let everyone else get ashore, and then once the air defense on the small island was shaped away, that platoon ran in and started to clean house. And yeah, it seems like some people lost their ISR, which is a big thing in modern combat. You lose your ISR, that you're just gonna have to figure it out. There were some moments of hilarity because I think it was Gucci lost a destroyer to a 60 millimeter mortar.
I did not hear that. That's really funny.
his 5-inch support got knocked out by the PRC mortar team.
Love it. That is, kudos to that mortar team. Never out of the fight. I don't care.
Yeah. But again, I thought it was, because I know we've talked a lot about the experimentation company commander tournament, and this had some flavor of that, but it was still level set to like, hey, there's 6 TOs, and really the major thing is how much air or how much amphib surface do you want going to the objective? So, the base, rifle company reinforced, that didn't really change.
Yep.
It was how do you want to get your guys there, which I thought was it gives players flexibility and some good agency and choice in how they want it. It's, again, still the same base unit. But it was just really how did they want to get there?
Yep. Now, I also elected to use the TO6. It made the most sense in terms of what could I show the enemy so that they wouldn't mass to wherever it was I was trying to go. I didn't want to isolate myself so that if the air defense became insurmountable, then I didn't have a solution. The only thing that really went sideways was they had a killer anti-tank missile section. Took out one of my ACVs, and that really slowed my roll there for a minute. But I did arguably the same thing. I actually took a little extra time in the planning phase to move my pieces around because I very early wanted to get my artillery ashore and then use that to support all the remainder of my movement. Use my fixed wing assets and my 5-inch shells to destroy those things that would enable the rest of the movement. And it turned out very well. With the exception of one, I failed to track that one of the ADA still existed, so I did lose one helicopter. That's always very frustrating to see, especially whenever you have only that 60% margin, right? Like once you dip below 60, it's an automatic fail. And not everyone, I think, fully grasped that, because if they hadn't played that way, you fall into the habit of playing all the way to that 70, 80, or even 90% like we saw in some of the top tactics scenarios where you're allowed to really allow some attrition for your forces. Not the same set of situations when you're trying to put Marines ashore. So, yeah, it ended up working out well for what it was I was trying to achieve, but I I cleaned the Western Island of all forces, but that wasn't enough to achieve the 90%. So good on the AI for recognizing, but just by having a couple of those assets on the Eastern Island, and at some point the 5-inch gun stopped hitting things. It would not attrit anymore. I don't know if that was a mechanism or just at some point you start to roll ones, and I was not able to achieve that attrition. But I made it all the way to turn 12 without losing. So I think eventually Midway would have fallen for sure.
Yeah, it was a good punch in the face as a starting scenario. Like, it was a good proper slog. Well, not really. It was a quick, dirty fight. Mm-hmm. But then round two, well, for my round two, but the middle 3 rounds, the traditional JTA, Company Commander Modern, Flashpoint campaigns that we know and love from last year, where we're actually playing other folks, that Company Commander scenario was a slog.
It was. So now we're talking about the Highway of Death. We're talking PRC forces versus ROC forces. Mm-hmm. And you're fighting over control over a highway, which is sunk deep in a valley, and extremely high vegetation, extremely limited movement. How did that scenario end up for you?
I played, it was Lieutenant Colonel Reeves from the McWill IGMC team, and it was pretty much a tie, but points-wise, he barely topped me. I think it ended up, I had it written down somewhere. It was like 5 points difference.
Yep.
But it did seem a lot of rounds ended up kind of like last year, where Flash or Company Commander Modern was, as long as you don't catastrophically lose, you will be fine.
Yeah.
And this scenario was just, I had the honor of my team to go first, so then I was able to give all my notes to Nate.
Yep.
To try and help him out. But it was very much, it was a slog. They gave us wonderful little maps and little planning products. Like, all that was awesome to have. And to noodle on prior to the match start and try and figure out, how we wanted to crack the egg. But yeah, it was just that one where, just like in real life, the map doesn't tell you how the terrain really is going to affect everything. And it was... Right. I tried to do a couple things on both sides, with the rocks and with the pricks. I got two mech infantry companies scooting through the south as the PRC. Mm-hmm. They managed to make it through, but they got bogged down by a single infantry squad just because of how constrained the terrain was. The tanks just ended up rolling up the highway because there wasn't really any other mobility corridors for them. Mm-hmm. The golf course was all right. I think I had a platoon reinforced of tanks there to try and open up some fire support, but the sight lines were garbage. Yep. And then when the M1s came out, they just ripped and tore. So on the rock side, the M1s were nigh indestructible. The big Chinese one-way UAS was the only thing that would reliably kill an Abrams in this scenario, unless you got your Chinese tanks into point-blank range.
Yep.
And again, it was a little dismayed, but it kind of evened out where the objectives wasn't really a big swing on points. If no one completes their objectives, each side gets 10 points. If one side completes their objectives, they get 20 points.
Yep.
And that was they just scattered, was it 12 objectives along the highway, and you had to have 2 more than your opponent to win the objective points. So 7, you have 7, they have 5, and I think most matches ended up with 7-5. I know you had a different story. With how that one went. But then it was a grind. Yes. Just absolute meat grinder, because you just get stuck in these, on the map it doesn't look like it, but then when you actually get down to the sidelines, you get just stuck in these little narrow corners where you're just absolutely just blasting at near point blank range, trying to get anything to go. As the rocks, my biggest point of suffering was just lack of ISR.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Because each side had one Group 3 UAV, and as soon as mine moved, it exploded.
Yep.
My opponent, his survived till turn 9. And then, so my air defense for both the rocks and the PRC was just spotty. So as the PRC, they just couldn't hit his drone. And then as the rocks, he was able to fly all 3 helos entirely across the map.
Nice.
Drop the troops off and then fly back. And the only one that got shot down by an Abrams.
Yeah, I do remember seeing that. I never actually employed the helos because I never felt comfortable moving them.
Yeah, I left mine up in the corner.
Waiting, yeah.
Yeah, I left mine up in the corner. I lost one, but it was just...
I think it was an Abrams as well that shot it down.
Yeah.
No movement. It was just hovering, and they shot it down, I guess.
Yeah, but I mean, I had my plan as a PRC to try and CAD things, but just...
Yeah.
I mean, that was the other thing, is the indirect fire assets were just absolutely not...
Yeah, not useful.
They I think 40% was the highest I had for anything on both sides. So I started trying to use smoke, or maybe if there's some infantry they could poke at. Either smoke, or really I just started using it to hit their IDF. Because the most reliable thing it could hit was their
IDF.
Outside of the box IDF units.
Yeah, that was the conclusion. I wasn't sure if Matt ever... I think he might have cottoned on to that's what I was doing towards the end, because it wasn't until the very end that he started doing it to me. But it was just like every time I had the option to shoot at his IDF, that's what I would shoot at.
Yeah,
otherwise,
that was like a 40% chance versus even like infantry in the open, like depending on what it was like I think the PRC heavy mortars was like, even infantry in the open was like 2%.
Yeah, not great. It was a very challenging scenario. I definitely give a lot of props to Matt, because he sent it to try to get one more objective point, right? You can't call it a victory point because he didn't gain anything from it. All he did was expose some assets that he didn't need to expose. And I think that was a big difference maker just in terms of how our points shook out, was because I got to shoot at some of those things that he exposed in an attempt to secure one more objective point, which did not yield any additional victory points. There was a very real point of confusion between the two of us about the scoring, because it became like he has at that point it was 8-4 instead of 7-5 victory points. Like, why is our score so tight? It's like, well, because it just became down, as long as you had 2 more, that was all you needed to achieve those victory points.
It's 10
then it just
points
became a matter
way.
of what assets were left, and you were tight enough that's how it balanced. It's like, that's disappointing, not necessarily in the sense of the scenario construction, but you want to make sure that you're getting the best of someone, that they're making the best decisions possible based on. But I mean, and that's what's tough, right? We only have the information that we have, and that was how those decisions shook out. So it was engaging. There was a lot of lessons learned. I know that some of the developers were kind of curious about what our guesses were going to be towards the scenario. I'd like to think that they liked some of our ideas. This one wasn't bad, because you learned a lot in regards to Taiwan itself, some of the different critical decisions that would have to be made by very senior leaders if it ever came to that type of conflict. And mostly I hope the biggest lesson is that we don't ever try to just fight for a highway that's surrounded by such terrain. It does not seem to be a useful spend of treasure or manpower.
Oh yeah, and I mean, I gave as many notes to Nate as I could, since again I played first and wanted to give him the recon. I know I think he got caught in something, so he didn't do as well as he had hoped. But yeah, it's one of those things where thinking about it, like, looking at the table and the scenarios, like, if I'm a battalion CO given that order, it's like, no. Not different. Yeah, it's, you can relieve me. I'm not going to throw men and material at this.
Yeah.
I'm going to need a hell of a lot more fire support and things.
Right.
Which I did like how like you barely had UAVs in this one, which very much kind of throws into the same problem Company Commander at last year's tournament was, well, minus the UAV. So now you have a bunch of constricting terrain and trying to get close enough to alaka-blam something and move past it. But yeah, it was just heavy constriction, like, perfect. Yeah, it was one of those things where, I'm looking at it and it's like, man, if I'm the Rocks defending this, I'm just going to let them get up the highway and then just carpet bomb the thing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's and that's what gets tough is sometimes you create these scenarios and you have to start off with the premise of we are not in week 1 of the fight, probably not even month 1. You're at a point where air is so degraded that the PRC's not afraid of the Rock's ability to carpet bomb a highway.
Yeah, just open maneuvers.
Right.
Yep.
And you begin to wonder if it's that deep in the conflict, like we're not maneuvering much anyway. We wouldn't have that number of tanks available. You would, again, these are big wild assumptions. I appreciate them trying to create a semi-plausible scenario that taught us a lot of things. I still would have preferred an opportunity to bring a little more Marine Corps, U.S. Marine Corps assets and fighting methodology, just opportunities to make Marine-type decisions in that type of scenario. So I know I mentioned that to one of the developers, like, oh, yeah, that does sound cool. I'm like, well, yeah, like I think at modern-day Marine, that'd be a really cool thing. Because what that meant was, even though we had 4 individual rounds, 3 computer-based, 2 of those computer-based were ROC versus PRC, which is great. It's engaging, it's fun, but I would have liked to have seen a little more Marine Corps actual fighting in there. I would like to see a little more maneuver involved, just because I like that level of decision making, and I think that's kind of what we ran into in Flashpoint campaigns as well, where PRC, ROC, but limited actual decision making. Lots of maneuver space if you're the ROC, one could argue. Very little maneuver space if you're the PRC. How did that round go for you?
That round went very well. I faced Lieutenant Kevin Dang from Canada. But yeah, no, I got top score, so I got a lovely little Air and Armor Würzburg.
Yeah.
Which is a very heavy box. It's fun. I haven't had a chance to fully dig in yet. Yeah, it was a scaled-down version of the Taiwan scenario that popped up prior to the tournament. And I know our match is still ongoing.
Oh, that's true. Yep.
But yeah, a couple of us were playing practice matches, and this one was devil's in the details. Yeah. Like, it's very much, as the PRC doing the landing, it's gonna suck either way you do it. You just have to figure out how you can punch through quick enough and get enough on the shore, and then hope that your rock opponent doesn't realize how much of a table he has you bent over.
Right.
So as the Rocks, it was 98-2 because I just I lined my tanks up on the beach. I set SOPs to max firing range because a lot of the SOPs at the start of the match had hold until fired upon.
Yeah.
So if you start changing those, that radically changes the scenario for someone. And so it was, I think the only units that made it to the beach was a small company that punched out to the east to go after the harbor. But at the end of the match, he had his rockets on mainland. He had 1 mortar system left that was floating in the middle of a bunch of sunken wrecks hiding. Yep. And then the 3 LCUs, which I did find a bug and talked with the developers. I had run out of time, so I mentioned it to one of them, and he's like, oh, let's play with this. But like the 2 Apaches I had as the Rocks, we played with their SOPs. They had enough weapons and ammo. But they just would not shoot at the LCUs.
Yeah.
And I dumped all the artillery I had at the very end on them. Nothing happened. So I know boats are still new to Flashpoint, and they're bringing some of us in to help playtest some things.
Yep.
So we'll see how that turns out, and I'm sure we'll get into this in a second, so I won't spoil it. As the PRC, that was a harder fight, but I had 70% of my forces left, and he was down to 42, and I tried for the harbor, didn't really get gains there, but I managed to take pretty much the airfield and start rolling guys into downtown Taipei.
Wow.
Not too much into downtown Taipei because there weren't objectives there this time. And
No.
There's real world, yes, I want to go for that stuff, but then there's the tournament of I don't want to burn through everything going for a fake objective like people did during the pre-qualifiers. Because you had blue Mew guys going for the airfield itself, and not for what I call the victory bowl, where all the victory points were in a lot of highly defensible terrain. So they were getting caught on an open airfield and just getting wasted. But as the PRC, I took my two main battalions, and one went far west, went straight down, went for the airfield, and then one was a little east of that and just went for that valley on the right side and just tried to hold from anything coming from the harbor and start poking down as a screening movement. And it worked out pretty well. A lot of little nuances, like the Chinese rocket artillery on the mainland, you have to manually tell it to reload because once they fire all their rockets, their security forces have enough ammunition that they don't never fall below 60%, so they don't automatically reload. So that one, again, devil's in the details, checking SOPs, checking TTPs. At some point, I caught my rock artillery tubes doing the shoot and scoot.
Yeah. Who told you to do that? I guess.
Yeah, no, you stay and just shoot until there's nothing left. But yeah, I mean, that one, it was... it worked well, but it was one of those things where it was very much... that was devil in the details. So yeah, just line the tanks up on the water, infantry in appropriate holding positions around the objectives, and just wait for it to play out.
Yeah, unfortunately, I had a very similar plan as the PRC that you did. My opponent, however, had no trouble arraying his forces and turning off their SOPs appropriately. So I made no footholds ashore, really. I did take the harbor there for a couple minutes and then lost it. And then I ended up with like one recon element that was kind of scooting around in the rear. And he did actually take a victory point, which I thought was really funny, but because it was just him and like maybe an LCU that were left, that was it. So that was still a catastrophic defeat for me.
The hero of China.
Yeah, that's right. He's got that one victory point. You know, the 1,500 points wasn't enough or 500 points wasn't enough to sway the end state. But it was very tough to see that scenario because I have a hunch that mathematically there was balance, but there was not tactical balance by any means. The ability to stack armor on the beach and destroy assets while they're still in the water without any type of suppression, and I shouldn't say without any, I mean, because there was air, there was the rocket artillery, but you couldn't use those in a way that could rapidly and immediately support your forces coming ashore.
It wasn't even enough to support one of the battalions going ashore.
Right.
Like, the one rocket, sure, you can hit 3 hexes or saturate the honeycomb of 7 hexes total, I think. The center hex and each one around it.
Right.
But even that plus the PRC helo sections, it's just not enough to suppress a section of beach large enough to land. Like, even if it's just the 3 mech infantry companies abreast, it wasn't enough to suppress that for long enough to establish a landing.
No, because at one point I did exactly that, and I just went as fast as I could. He's like, hey, just go, thinking that was going to be the only solution to it, right? Like, hit them and then don't give them any time to flood any kind of reinforcements. And I mean, they were just fighting on the beach and never physically like made it ashore. So,
yeah. But once they did, they would start. Those mech infantry companies would rip into just about everything.
Yeah.
And then, but eventually, it got bogged down enough where, you're trying rest and repair them so they can actually reload their high-end ATGMs and things like that. But there's just more things keep coming, and I actually lost a victory point at the end because my mech infantry company on it was at 2, and then a recon section of 5 popped in the hex right next to it, and the weight flipped the objective at the end.
Yep.
But yeah, it was. I almost would have preferred the bigger scenario we practiced, because then you could say it's like, hey, can you prioritize which flank you're going to hit or which? Because it is absolute task saturation with that one. But it gives you the chance to hopefully catch the enemy unawares because they weren't able to prioritize a section of beach early enough that you can pop ashore and get enough stuff ashore to start making something happen.
Yeah, it's tough. I think there's different ways to attack that particular scenario in terms of expanding it for a competition, diminishing it for a competition. I was actually surprised to see this year that we played both red and blue, unlike last year where you played either red or blue. I couldn't decide if I liked that better or not. Just out of sheer, I like the balance of playing both, but the time, the speed at which you're having to go through things, and there's some inherent delays in the game itself where it just kind of took a long time to load. And it's one of those, I didn't notice those last year, and I think it's because we only played the one side. When you play both and you're desperate for your minutes at that point, then it became this dude, I need this game to freaking load because my clock is ticking and I'm not doing anything.
You're just sitting, half of us were just sitting there heads down waiting for the...
Yeah.
Okay,
it
loaded.
Happened to a lot of us. As soon as...
40 seconds to a minute to load. Yeah, there was some stress in that. I appreciate the traditional I'm red, you're red as well. Because that, overall, that balances. That's a good balance. It also prevents someone, not exactly getting bored, but prevents one side just waiting there.
Right.
Because perfect world, you should be tapping at about the same time, depending how quickly you are at buttonology and planning and whatnot. So it's good for keeping engagement and constant pressure, especially in a tournament scenario. So ramping the stress up some. But I think, and we talked with Tim off to the side about potential scenarios for next year.
Yep.
And I gave him one that he liked. Were you there for that one? Or was that Matt? Okay, yeah. So the scenario I proposed to Tim was, because he wants to try and bring it back to the Marine Corps and keep it amphibious.
Yep.
So essentially a king of the island with 2 Mew, a mirror match, 2 Mews trying to take objectives on the island.
Yep.
Obviously that will need quite a bit of play testing and a little bit more dev on the ships and whatnot. But that might be... Who knows? That could be a fun tournament scenario that gets after what Tim wants to do. Because with the PRC amphib ops, it was simpler because with the amphibious stuff, you just tell it to move. Assault, deliberate, hasty, whatever. You still have to do the landing plans for the things on the LCACs and the LCUs. Maybe the PRC could have used some air assault elements to try and punch through and create a problem somewhere. The rocks did have some LAD, which did do some work, but really it was the freaking the 50 cal gunners were the kings of the sky for both my matches, where they were wrecking everything.
Yep.
That got close, which is with a lot of my other Flashpoint scenarios is really rare for for ground units to non-air defense ground units to engage a helicopter, but for whatever reason,
that's a good point.
The rock mech infantry on their 50 cals were they were having their day.
Yep, had at least one go down due to someone's 50 cal. That was very interesting. That figures.
Yeah. one of my PRC skid sections supporting the harbor seizure just disappeared because they flew right over a platoon and received 8 50 cal hits and then gone.
Yeah, I like the idea of getting a little back into Marine Corps assets. I like the idea of keeping it amphibious. I do like the mirror match idea, just in terms of keeping the balance. I think you have less of a need at that point to do a clock, because then I think you kind of have your 3-hour opportunity and it's a 3-2-1 go. I do think a lot of playtesting would have to be involved, because your terrain becomes so important at that point. The number of decisions both goes down and goes up, right? Like, you only have so many assets for counter surveillance or counter air, something like that. What are you moving via LCAC? What are you moving via air? And where, to what end? Like, those are legitimate considerations.
Yeah, and it could be. Hopefully, we get talking with Tim on this. But is it everything starts on ship and then tries to get to the island, or is there already a company there with a foothold? So then, do you reinforce the company that already has a foothold, or do you try and launch really far on the other side to set up something to spoil your enemy's offload? I think there's a lot of promise there. So we'll see what Tim and the team start up with and what we. What we'll see for next year. I know. I think they were also debating doing a chess clock for company commander, because I know I was waiting on my opponent quite a bit.
Yeah, it was kind of funny because we didn't need one last year. Mm-hmm. Although ironically, that was
there was maybe 2 matches that went past. Yeah,
I didn't think about that. I forget. Because one version, I was done within 7 turns. Right. The other one took, we almost made it to turn 20. They did. They made us go all the way to turn 20. Yep. And that was almost 3.5 hours worth of play. It's like, if we had stopped it at 3 hours, I think I would have won outright.
And we stopped at turn 11 for mine. And it was his game. He even credited that if my ISR as the rocks didn't get blasted out of the sky turn 1, it probably would have been at least dead even. Yeah. But again, it's even company commander, not as complex as initially thought. It just ended up being a slog. Right. But just the amount of movement units it took to move, and I think a lot of people said this for round 1 or round 2 to go back. Excuse me. Go back to that one, is it was frustrating in that it was so many clicks and so much effort for so little gain, because there's just a lot of misses, a lot of slogging through the woods. Flashpoint was just that one was, depending on how you set it up, that was just a very violent end for somebody, or a very violent slog to the airfield for the other side. Yeah.
I would agree with that. I do think there's math involved somewhere. I'd be fascinated to discuss that with some of the company commander developers. I wonder what Hexwar Keith's idea or thought would be about the number of turns in a tournament versus the size of the units, and it just becomes a click rate. Mm-hmm. So if you just have a TO company worth 250 points, should you be able to reach turn 20, because there's literally only so many things that you can click and move. Mm-hmm. But that number goes up if you have more drones, more fire support, stuff like that. So maybe you reduce it to 15 turns, and that way you not necessarily force a conclusion to the game. But I'm reluctant to add a chess clock just out of sheer you should just
trying to speed things up.
Yeah. And I know Tim has mentioned the idea of adding an internal chess clock to the games themselves, and I wouldn't mind that nearly as much, because then you're not being punished for the processing
loading
time.
Yep, the loading, the downloading, the uploading. Yep.
But that would require a lot of legitimate testing in the real world, because it's like your play clock says I still have 10 minutes, but it's been 5 hours of gameplay. We've made no progress. That's its own problem. We can't afford that one. I want to keep reiterating that I think Flashpoint is an exceptional game.
Yes.
I think there are a lot of rough spots that still need to be ironed out, as evidenced by the amount of loading that it has to go through. But the fact that it is a beautiful blend of being specific turn-based versus a little bit of the you issue orders and then it goes through a series of modeling and simulation runs in order to show what it has achieved, I think is a great planning tool. I think it forces the commander out of the I move every single chess piece and into I'm creating a plan, and I like that. I want to sustain that. I don't want these criticisms to come across as a I don't like the game. This is there's huge potential for these games.
I love
We're getting closer all the time.
Yeah, I love it, and I love the single timeline concept that it does.
Yep.
Whereas, Company Commander is I go, you go. Same with JTA. So if I delete something on my turn, you don't get that anymore. Whereas Flashpoint is whatever we do, it all is happening on a single timeline based on the SOPs and the unit capabilities. They are reacting as they are told to do in a realistic fashion.
Yep. I think there's a lot to sustain there, but it is still a work in progress, and there's a lot of opportunity there to improve. And speaking of improvement, we got to see version, I guess technically it's 1.3 of Joint Tactics Arena. What was
JTA.
your impression of JTA?